The Galactic generals looked upon Earth's historical weapons with a sense of confidence that verged on smugness. Viewpoint: it seemed absurd to witness muskets firing once per 20 seconds and artillery needing reloading. This was the pinnacle of using tight formations to keep soldiers in line and reloading full crews. Weakness: their cutting-edge technology, which could break up targets at unthinkable distances, made these individuals unnecessarily vulnerable. The generals analyzed Earth's history using what they considered to be outdated earthly instruments as part of a larger examination of planetary military tactics. Its goal was to clearly indicate possible dangers, or, when Earth's history was examined, inspiration from less advanced civilizations led to a clamor of mockery from these creatures from a galaxy where precision drones and plasma fields decided battles couldn't understand why people continued to use such antiquated techniques to test the galactic general's strength for so long. They boasted of weaponry that could strike across dimensions, making them synonymous with technological sophistication. Armies powered by artificial intelligence and shields that absorbed the firepower of the whole fleet. Earth's history, with its gigantic metal projectiles and black powder, appeared to be the primitive scrawls of a race that hardly meant to refute the idea that people used to fight wars by forming lines and firing in coordinated bursts. They found it almost humorous, yet their rejection was based on presumptions rather than strategy. They were unable to understand the fundamental idea of military victory, which is the efficient use of available resources. The Redcoats of Earth's history were more than just warriors. Brandishing crude firearms were a development in combat based on strategic planning, discipline, and synchronization. These concepts' vision went beyond the constraints of their instruments. The cosmic generals frequently attributed Earth's conflicts to mechanical inefficiencies. Muskets were deemed useless due to their one-shot mechanism and lengthy reload time. They claimed that the necessity for Earth's armies were put at needless risk, while soldiers stood in precarious positions. Yet this, an important fact that was overlooked by oversimplification, was that those formations were not defective. They were a remedy for the era's technological constraints, which included Earth's reliance on cannons and muskets, was not a sign of weakness, but rather of a general's ability to adapt to their galaxy's reliance on advanced technology, ought to convince them that stronger firepower was necessary for success and overwhelming force. Yet history has shown that winning battles required more than just having good weaponry, achieved by the unity of tactics and the determination to battle. One general, who was especially loud, in his mockery brought attention to cannon crews' inefficiency, a weapon that takes 6 to 8 men to operate. He called it a design failure, while someone else pointed out how well those same cannons shaped fights. The generals were responsible for breaching enemy lines and striking advancing forces with crushing blows. The more they examined, the more they were compelled to face the notion that Earth's simplicity and weaponry did not correlate to ineffectiveness. The more it became evident that they were extrapolating their ideals onto Earth's past, the more they concentrated on technology. Their sense of superiority prevented them from seeing the ingenuity that enabled Earth's achievements, which human soldiers made up for. Their weapon deficiencies with accurate exercises, unwavering training, and creative tactics. Each musket-shot volley was not haphazard, but meticulously planned to subdue the opponent and maximize impact. The generals were still dubious, wondering why Earth's armies would voluntarily fight protracted wars with such antiquated techniques. The solution was found in human adaptability and tenacity. Earth's history showed a lasting impact in a wide span of time, and so would the legacy stories that followed them. Who had never encountered limitations in the same manner? Their society placed a higher value on overwhelming might, while Earth's story described a permanent limitation in the same manner. The generals were unfamiliar with the idea of using scarce resources to produce extraordinary outcomes. It was one of maximizing the resources at hand. The generals' haughtiness resulted from their ignorance of what constituted strength. They mistakenly believed that advanced machinery was a sign of power, not realizing that actual power frequently comes from Earth's redcoats. Exemplified this idea by using what they had, not how sophisticated their equipment were. They had transformed crude firearms into tools of power, not as individuals, but as a group. This knowledge gap was related to philosophy as much as technology. The generals' war was a complex dance of calculations that needed to be addressed using the best hardware available to humans. The Redcoats' strategy, morale, and inventiveness went beyond just firing their muskets. They collaborated as a harmony transformed their perceived shortcomings into strengths, as a coherent unit, with each action supporting the others. Those who had never encountered such limitations in their thinking were unaware of this subtlety. Galactic generals started to face up to the unpalatable realities that Earth's past might have appeared to be a sequence of mediocre battles, but it exposed a more profound story and demonstrated how a species constrained by its own technology might still accomplish remarkable feats by using creativity and teamwork, which the generals first rejected as their laughter subsided when Primal began to emerge as a deliberate response to the difficulties of the era. It was simple to make fun of Earth's weaponry as their comprehension grew, but it was difficult to describe the triumphs they had won. Harder, there was a counter-argument based on each apparent inefficiency. Although the muskets were slow to reload, when used by disciplined soldiers, they became deadly. Although they were heavy, the deadly tools of war cannons changed the direction of the fights the generals started. Seeing that Earth's weapons, despite their simplicity, were never the complete story, the Galactic generals ultimately had to deal with the humble discovery that they had undervalued Earth not because to its armaments, but due to their own presumptions. They failed to recognize the difference between simplicity and inferiority. Adaptation brilliance. The Redcoats of Earth, with their forms and muskets, were not artifacts of a primitive past, yet evidence of a timeless truth. Ingenuity and perseverance frequently surpassed pure technological prowess. The Redcoats' technological prowess was demonstrated not only by their weaponry, but also by their remarkable capacity to transform. These troops turned their weaknesses into strengths by embodying a system of innovation and discipline that went beyond the tangible weapons of battle. Their success was a result of intense training, steadfast unity, and a profound knowledge of the battlefield. They were a machine-like force motivated by power rather than merely humans battling for survival. Their performance was based on a shared goal and an unparalleled commitment to discipline and drill. This was not about blindness. Each soldier understood their position inside the regiment, and every move was practiced to perfection. Compliance, but more about establishing an unbreakable coordination chain. When a queue of Redcoats fired their muskets in a coordinated action intended to keep a constant wall of firepower in place. The outcome. What distinguished the Redcoats from their adversaries who used less disciplined tactics was their lethal efficiency. Because of their adaptability, the Redcoats evolved techniques while muskets had limited range and were slow to reload. They used linear formations to minimize these drawbacks, optimizing the effect of each line would fire their volleys, then retreat to reload so that the following line could take their position. A rotating mechanism provided an almost constant stream of firepower. It was an easy yet clever method to ensure the Redcoats' discipline extended beyond fire tactics, allowing them to maximize the potential of their weaponry. Trained to react swiftly and effectively to intricate battlefield orders, which enabled them to adapt their formations according to the terrain and the actions of the adversary, they may establish defensive positions. When mobility was crucial, they could spread out into skirmish lines or use squares to oppose cavalry. This adaptability allowed them an advantage over less well-prepared rivals who found it difficult to adjust to shifting conditions. The psychological influence of the Redcoats was equally important, as confronting a queue of soldiers firing in and out with machine-like accuracy. Any adversary would find perfect unison intimidating due to the combination of the visual display and the sound of musket volleys. Of closely allied ranks frequently demoralized the enemy soldiers before any physical combat had started. Their capacity to demoralize and threaten opponents gave their tactical supremacy a psychological component. Redcoat officers were essential in upholding this degree of discipline. They were more than just commanders. The system's linchpins illuminated from the front, guaranteeing that commands were obeyed and formations were kept under. Despite the turmoil of combat, This hands-on leadership fostered a culture of mutual trust and accountability among soldiers. They were loyal because they understood their leaders weren't asking them to do anything they wouldn't do themselves. The Redcoats received constant morale training, and furrow recruits were trained to withstand the mental and physical strain of battle, in addition to learning the mechanics of musketry. They learned how to remain steadfast in the face of fire, reload under duress, and keep their formations even when engaged. Despite the tremendous difficulties, their success was based on this training, which transformed regular men into fighter pilots. Becoming well-behaved warriors who can do strategies by keeping posture perfect was becoming identifiable as a strategy of adaptation, went beyond strategies to the essence of combat. They were the result of a time when conflicts were as much about strategy and endurance as they were about brute force. They recognized that battles weren't won by individual bravery, but by unified teams striving for a shared objective. This understanding enabled them to succeed even when confronted with opponents who used superior numbers or unorthodox strategies. The Redcoats proved that their usefulness was not limited to conventional European battlefields. Their flexibility across campaigns in a variety of settings, from the arid desert to the lush forests of North America. In the Indian plains, they discovered how to adapt their strategies to the particular difficulties of every theater in the north. For instance, America modified its inflexible formations to oppose colonial militias' guerrilla warfare in India. To traverse uncharted territory and climate, they integrated local resources and expertise, which allowed them to learn and adapted to guarantee its applicability in a wide range of situations. The significance of logistics in Syria and Serbia is impossible to overestimate. The help that the Redcoats received from a well-functioning supply system made sure they had the means to maintain protracted campaigns with this logistical effectiveness, enabled them to continue fighting for extended periods of time, especially in hostile or distant settings. The smooth transition between strategy and supplies was evidence of the larger military system, that the constraints of their time, their use of technology was a crucial component in the Redcoats' triumph. Even while their guns and muskets would appear archaic by today's standards, they symbolize the ICAL of modern warfare. For instance, military engineering's flint-lock musket was a dependable and reasonably known weapon. Cannons were an effective weapon for their period, offering deadly firepower that could breach enemy lines and fortresses. These instruments and their methodical application made the Redcoats a powerful force in the cultural realm. Many of these soldiers' effectiveness was also influenced by the Redcoats' ideological unity, were inspired by a sense of duty and devotion to their nation and fellow citizens. Strengthened by their unit's organization and discipline, produced a shared identity that went beyond individual differences. The outcome was a force that could withstand adversity and stay committed to their goals despite the most difficult circumstances. The Redcoats' legacy encompasses not only their triumphs, but also the values they inspired. They exemplified the idea that superior technology alone is not enough to win wars. Rather, effective utilization of the resources at hand, their methodical approach, strategic flexibility, and psychological influence established a benchmark that affected military operations for generations, demonstrating that even in a time when tools were few, human ingenuity and perseverance could accomplish amazing. Their tale serves as a reminder of the timeless realities of combat, the Redcoats' capacity to transform shortcomings into assets, their focus on order and unity, and their readiness to face adversity. They were among the most successful combatants in history because of their ability to adjust to shifting conditions. They weren't only troops, they served as evidence of the Redcoats' unwavering effectiveness in planning and teamwork, symbolized a systematic and disciplined approach to warfare, and their tactics were created to extract the most. Using their weaponry and formations to their advantage, they showed how cohesive planning and execution could control the chaos of combat. Every step was planned, every musket firing was deliberate, and every movement was measured. One of the Redcoats' distinguishing characteristics was their capacity to sustain formation as part of a wider scheme. The line infantry approach, which was crucial to their effectiveness under extreme strain, was not. Each line of soldiers functioned as a unit, not just to stand in rows, but to manage the flow of fighting. A revolving mechanism that allows the following line to take their place, while the front line fires and steps back to reload. This system's placement guaranteed a steady flow of fire that could smother and overwhelm advancing adversaries in spite of the firing power. Due to the restrictions of single-shot muskets, the Redcoats' unwavering attention to formation maintenance also enabled them to triumph in conflicts when timing and accuracy were crucial. But when facing oncoming adversaries, they didn't rely on undisorganized individual efforts, but rather functioned as a unified team, their constant volleys forming a wall of pressure. This strategy needed a great deal of firepower that destroyed attackers before they could reach close quarters. Discipline and steely nerves, because every soldier had to have faith in their fellow soldiers to carry out their duties. The Redcoat demonstrated their ability to modify their formations to meet the demands of defensive battles with precision. Particular dangers they encountered from cavalry, they positioned themselves in hollow squares, forming a 360-degree defensive stance with, simply put, this strategy countered the impact and velocity of HFY mount charges, turning what may have once been an obstacle in a training and control situation into an opportunity. When an enemy cavalry saw a solid, immovable square, it frequently turned from a tactical disadvantage to their flexibility, also extended to opposite demands of other elements, allowing them to pause or completely retreat when the terrain or enemy. The Redcoats may change from stiff formations to looser, more flexible ones if certain tactics were used. And reaching down, too, arrangements which were especially noticeable in conflicts fought in unusual locations like dense forests or rough terrain. They modified their lines accordingly, preserved their efficacy while reducing vulnerabilities, which is evidence of their leadership and training, was essential to the Redcoats' infantry tactics, and they incorporated cannons into their using precise battlefield tactics to breach enemy lines, demolish fortifications, or offer covering fire. During advancements, cannons were not only destructive weapons, but also powerful psychological weapons that could tremble the determination of even the most resolute adversaries. The devastation caused by the loud roar of cannon fire, an effect frequently signaled a battle's turning point. And another crucial element of their battlefield triumph was effective communication and order relaying enabled their units to react swiftly to evolving interlinked drummers, buglers, and flag signals were employed to transmit orders throughout the battlefield, enabling synchronized actions, even within a chaotic situation. This degree of planning was vital for carrying out intricate maneuvers and preserving the integrity of their formations. The comprehension of the Redcoat. Another characteristic that distinguished them was their timing and posture. They didn't only respond to hostile activities, but aimed to control the course of combat by putting oneself in a favorable position or pressuring adversaries into adverse circumstances. They continuously swung the balance in their favor, and their commanders were adept at interpreting the battlefield and making choices that took advantage of their opponent's weaknesses while maximizing their own flaws. Their efficacy was not restricted to large-scale battles in lesser conflicts. Redcoats showed the same degree of organization and discipline, modifying their strategies to fit the scale and nature of the struggle. This capacity to function well in both major engagements and minor skirmishes made their adaptability and unpredictability, which kept their opponents off balance, was a crucial factor. The sight of the Redcoats in their recognizable uniforms was a contributing factor in their success. Remaining strong in the face of peril had a profound psychological impact on both allies and adversaries. Under fire, they instilled confidence in their ranks, while instilling uncertainty and dread in their adversaries, frequently provided them with an advantage before a shot was fired. And their leadership was crucial to preserving this. High-performance officers weren't aloof individuals giving orders from behind, but active participants in the dynamics of the battlefield, setting an example for their soldiers by taking initiative and making sure ensuring directives were carried out precisely. And this hands-on leadership style fostered a relationship of mutual respect and trust, significantly strengthening the unity and efficiency of their unit's logistical support between officers and soldiers. The Redcoats' operational performance was greatly aided by a supply chain that made sure they had the supplies required to maintain protracted wars, such as food and ammunition and medical equipment, all of which were essential for preserving their ability to fight, keep their victims alive, and lead meaningful lives once they entered the German camps. Well-equipped forces were able to where others would have faltered in the heat of hostile fire. When their preparation and training were finally put to the test in combat, the Redcoats were exceptional at preserving their composure, and carrying out their plans while under fire was the consequence of relentless. Each soldier knew what was expected of them through drill and preparation, and this clarity of purpose enabled them to operate efficiently, even in the most tumultuous conditions. The combined impact of these elements included a military force that the Redcoats could depend on to continuously outperform its own size. Overwhelming numbers or superior technology, but they demonstrated their accuracy and dependability in their strategies. That triumphs that might appear unlikely at first might be achieved with meticulous planning, focused execution, and efficient use of existing resources. At first appearance, their capacity for innovation, adaptation, and performance under pressure made the Redcoats a formidable presence on every battlefield, serving as a monument to the value of planning and cooperation, demonstrating that the effective and planned use of resources is frequently the key to victory in combat. Instead of using only firepower, the Redcoats left a legacy of excellence that is still studied and appreciated today. Earth's military history was not advanced by galactic standards, yet the weapons design and use demonstrated the inventiveness of people who used them, and the musket, often written off as archaic, was essential to Meissen, despite being imprecise over time and slow to reload. Warfare in the 18th and 19th centuries, its simplicity, and the soldiers' discipline in firing it in volleys were what gave it its strength over long distances. Muskets produced a steady, well-coordinated force that repressed adversaries and dealt serious casualties. The muskets were made to be as effective as possible given their technological limitations, and reloading required a series of actions, but training made sure soldiers could complete this procedure fast and under pressure. Because individual muskets lacked precision, the Redcoats' collective use made up for it in mass formations, using muskets with devastating effect, giving opponents who depended on ill-prepared strategies the opportunity to keep the musket's rate of fire steady during combat, making it a weapon that was significantly more powerful than the sum of its parts. Another important element of Earth's armament, the parts cannons, had an equally significant impact in spite of these guns' drawbacks included slow loading times and challenging maneuverability, but their sheer force was irresistible. In densely populated areas, massive guns were employed to breach enemy lines, demolish fortifications, and cause mayhem. Structures made a tremendous sound, and their psychological impact was just as powerful as their physical impact. Before direct conflict cannons arrived in a variety of forms, and devastating force frequently demoralized opposing troops. Each is appropriate for particular roles in the battlefield, such as field artillery, gave commanders the freedom and mobility to place firepower where it was needed. With the majority of sea cannons on massive weaponry on the other side, were made to breach castles and walls, forcing entrenched opponents to surrender. The efficient use of these instruments necessitated both technical and strategic insight, which makes them vital resources in the Redcoats' aeronautic beneath. Frequently disregarded, while talking about the past, weapons were essential in close-quarters battle. They directly impacted spiritual contact and landed killing in the past as well. In addition to muskets, bayonets turned firearms into spears, enabling soldiers to fight adversaries up close. Charge was a strategy used to breach enemy lines and make opposing forces fearful of well-armed men. When the berets, who are less organized, advance with bits fixed, it frequently causes panic, chaos, and retreat. Its simplicity and adaptability made it more effective than firearms. Depend on ammo, which makes it a dependable weapon in extended combat where supplies may run low. It was a crucial component of the Redcoat strategy because it was both a close combat weapon and a psychological tool, but not. The Redcoats' discipline and commitment were symbolized by the bayonet, which was as glitzy as firearms or cannons. Flintlock mechanisms from that era were made with a balance between practicality and lethality. For example, the flint was a major improvement over previous matchlock devices. Lock made it easier to operate and more dependable, allowing soldiers to fire more reliably in a variety of circumstances. These advancements, while little by today's standards, represented the state-of-the-art in military technology. Beyond the various weaponry of the time, what really stood out was how these instruments were combined into coherent strategy, highlighting their efficacy by enabling the Redcoats to use muskets, cannons, and benets, should use each weapon's advantages while reducing its weaknesses in order to control the battlefield. Shortcomings. This integration necessitated meticulous preparation and implementation, stressing the significance of training. In order to optimize the potential of the resources at hand, leadership and logistics were another. An essential component of Earth's weaponry's efficacy was the continuous resupply of ammunition for muskets and cannons. In order for soldiers to remain combat-ready, they required food, water, and medical attention. Long-term campaigns need a well-functioning supply chain, and Redcoats was exceptional in this area, making sure that regardless of the situation, their soldiers were prepared and well-equipped to fight mediocre battles, but it exposed a more profound story and demonstrated how a species constrained by its own technology might still accomplish remarkable feats by using creativity and teamwork, which the generals first rejected as their laughter subsided when Primal began to emerge as a deliberate response to the difficulties of the era. It was simple to make fun of Earth's weaponry as their comprehension grew, but it was difficult to describe the triumphs they had won. Harder, there was a counter-argument based on each apparent inefficiency. Although the muskets were slow to reload, when used by disciplined soldiers, they became deadly. Although they were heavy, the deadly tools of war cannons changed the direction of the fights the generals started. Seeing that Earth's weapons, despite their simplicity, were never the complete story, the Galactic generals ultimately had to deal with the humble discovery that they had undervalued Earth not because to its armaments, but due to their own presumptions. They failed to recognize the difference between simplicity and inferiority, the simplicity of. Additionally, Earth's weapons made them extremely resilient, in contrast to advanced technologies that are prone to malfunctioning under heavy fire. Because of their longevity, muskets and cannons were comparatively simple to maintain and repair in difficult environments, work well in a variety of settings, including the arid deserts of the Americas and the lush jungles of India. These weapons' versatility helped the Redcoats succeed in a variety of Earth's theaters. Weapons have shortcomings, such as musket accuracy and slow rate of. There were several difficulties because of fire and the heavy weight of guns, but these restrictions were lessened by the Redcoats' tactics, which prioritized tactical and discipline coordination. Through innovation, they transformed possible flaws into advantages. This strategy illustrated the significance of combining technology and human ingenuity. The efficiency of Earth's weapons and their users are inextricably linked, and Redcoats' discipline and training made sure that every little charge carried out, every cannon loaded, and every musket fired all aided in achieving the overall strategic objective. Their capacity to function as a cohesive team increased the effect of their weaponry and produced a much more powerful force. More impressive than the sum of its parts, these weapons were notable for their use rather than their sophistication. The history of the planet demonstrates that technology by itself cannot decide how wars turn out. Redcoats showed that discipline, strategy, and the efficient use of the instruments at hand could overcome even the biggest obstacles. Their success was a result of more than simply their weaponry. The legacy of these weapons rests on their capacity to evolve and adapt within the limitations of their time. Display of basic military concepts. They demonstrated that victory in combat depended on more than merely planning, coordination, and flexibility are necessary. But specifically, the guns were aimed at particular targets may seem the kind whose life might have been easier with less firepower. Conditions. The Redcoats' mastery of these ideas enabled them to accomplish triumphs that would have appeared insane. In retrospect, the simplicity of Earth's weaponry may seem unlikely given the constraints of its technology. But it was also their strongest point. Their simple layout and user-friendliness made it possible for broad deployment, steady performance, and the troops' resourcefulness and fortitude, who these weapons came to represent. The adaptability and tenacity of the human spirit. They were not only weapons of war, they were also symbols of the ingenuity and resourcefulness that characterized the Redcoats' legacy. After dismissing Earth's military history as archaic, the Galactic generals started to reconsider their presumptions as they investigated the efficacy of its plans and techniques. The Redcoats, with their systematic strategy and creative application of weapons that appeared antiquated, questioned the idea that progress. The generals were obliged to reconceptualize the idea that technology was the only indicator of military power. The essentials of combat and the contribution of human ingenuity to victory limits. The capacity of Earth's armies to adapt stood out the most. Although their technology was basic, they were able to increase its effectiveness by coordinating training, and the Redcoats' strategy was unmatched, and they demonstrated that success by embodying this flexibility. More than just sophisticated weaponry was needed in combat. One also needed to know how to make the most of the resources at hand. Maximum potential, a notion that the generals found unexpected and instructive. The Redcoats' success came from more than only their discipline. They were also able to innovate. They continuously modified their strategies to satisfy the needs of various contexts and enemies, whether they are engaged in combat in the open fields, the arid landscapes of India, or the deep forests of North America. Of Europe, they adjusted their tactics to fit the difficulties they encountered. Flexibility and resilience traits that went beyond technology were taught by adaptation. Limitations. The Redcoats were not impressed with the Earth's military force's emphasis on collaboration. Separate fighters operating separately yet as a unified team in which every soldier performed a distinct function. Working together increased the potency of their weapons and strategies, resulting in a force that was more powerful than the sum of its parts. Generals understood that the Redcoats' success was largely due to this emphasis on teamwork, which might be. Another revelation that was consistently utilized was the psychological component of combat. The Redcoats recognized the value of morale, both their own and that of the generals, something they had mostly ignored. That of their adversaries, by keeping a united and orderly front, they frequently exuded confidence and strength. This psychological edge was as important as breaking the will of opposing forces before physical combat started. Their physical strategies, which demonstrate the multifaceted character of successful warfare. The idea of leadership was particularly noteworthy, as Redcoats officers were essential in upholding discipline and personal character. They set an example by making sure that orders were carried out precisely and encouraging expertise. Their troops' loyalty and trust were fostered by this hands-on leadership style. Strong relationship between troops and leaders, a relationship that improved their unit's overall effectiveness. Regardless of the technology, generals understood that leadership was crucial in determining how wars turned out. Included the Redcoats' logistical infrastructure, which further impressed the generals that maintaining an army was necessary. It required a dependable supply line to deliver food, ammunition, and medical care in addition to weapons. Code's ability to continue battling for long periods of time, particularly under difficult environments, demonstrated the value of logistical planning and brought attention to the larger infrastructure that supported their accomplishments, lessened the generals in Earth's military history, and highlighted the importance of strategy over sheer firepower. The Redcoats relied on cautious planning rather than overwhelming force, planned and carried out maneuvers that allowed them to frequently outmaneuver and outthink their opponents. Deciding the results of conflicts, this tactical method emphasized the notion that planning and intelligence were as crucial as the actual weaponry that they battled. At the conference in contention with the U.S. versus billionaires, while Bobkis and his companions defended their weight against prison attacks by recognizing the importance of this way of thinking, the generals were especially interested in the ideological and cultural unity of the Redcoats, Earth's soldiers, battled for a collective identity and a common goal in addition to survival. Strengthened by intense training and a solid command structure, produced a degree of cohesion that was challenging to break. This sense of purpose, the generals realized, was a force multiplier that could transform even scarce resources into a strong advantage. Yet another crucial realization was the harmony between innovation and tradition in Earth's military. In their military operations, the Redcoats followed tried-and-true rules of discipline and formation while, when required, adopting new strategies and technologies. Even as the nature of battle changed, their ability to combine the old and the new kept them effective. The general viewed this as a useful lesson in flexibility that they might use for their own tactics. The significance of resilience was also shown by the study of Earth's history. The Redcoats frequently faced numerically superior adversaries or uncharted territory while operating under difficult circumstances. However, they continued to use their training discipline and group determination to go over these difficulties. This tenacity served as a reminder that winning battles wasn't the only thing that mattered in the war, but also the generals' perseverance and adaptation over time compelled them to face their own prejudices as they examined Earth's average routes of harsh conditions, almost all of whom had joined the Redcoats as remnants of a bygone period. But their efficiency proved that universal discipline coordination was the foundation of battle. This insight challenged the notion that strategy and resiliency were just as important on Earth as they were in the galactic theater. Generals should reconsider how they waged war and take into account the larger elements that influenced success. The legacy of the Redcoats demonstrated that human ingenuity's enduring strength transcends limitations, might be defeated by their methodical approach to warfare, innovation, and flexibility, along with their capacity for learning and development, enabled them to accomplish incredible feats in spite of their limitations of technology. Its legacy was a potent warning that technology by itself, although not the decisive factor in success, the generals came away from their research into Earth's history with a newfound honoring its military traditions. They understood that the Redcoats' victory was a reflection of timeless ideas that go across technology barriers and encourage flexibility. Resilience and leadership tactics were just as important in their advanced society as they were in earlier earthly times. Generals departed with a greater comprehension of what it meant to be a great warfighter, a lesson that would guide their tactics for Earth's history, which was long written off as archaic, has turned out to be a wealth of science. With their well-organized formations and creative strategies, the Redcoats served as a representation of the entire civilization. Their tale served as a reminder of the eternal strength of human ingenuity and perseverance, that despite enormous obstacles, victory may be attained with planning, tenacity, and making efficient use of the resources at hand. The generals were humbled by their discoveries and returned with these teachings to Thoth. The residue of Earth's military past has permanently altered their own worlds.